Yo guys, and welcome back to another video and a new series on this channel. So what is this project we're doing, I hear you asking? It's going to be a Kahoot clone. You know that quiz platform where someone hosts a game on a massive screen and everyone can join in on their devices? That's what we're making. It's a good learning project because we cover a lot of different topics. We're going to set up both front-end and back-end and communicate between them, so we're going to make a full stack application. We're also going to set up an API that the front-end talks to with CRUD, create, read, update, delete, and databases, because we need to actually store our data somewhere, and we're going to be storing it in a database. We're also going to be using WebSockets to give us real-time communication between a client and server. And we're also going to touch a bit on game logic. So we're going to have a good blend between web development and actual game development. A lot of good topics that you will have learned about after watching this series. So this is the technology stack that we're going to be using. MongoDB, Golang, Svelte, and Tailwind CSS. So what is this MongoDB and why does it have such a funny name? It actually stands for humongous. And the reason we're going to be using MongoDB is because it's a NoSQL database. So instead of writing weird SQL queries, we're just going to be using a format that we are quite used to. Pretty much JSON. So we're going to write the documents and store them in collections. No need to have any tables anymore. And since we have a bit more complex data structures and varying data structures, it's actually quite an advantage to use NoSQL because it's much easier to model it. And we're also going to be using Golang. It's really popular right now and for very many good reasons. It's a pretty easy language to learn. There's not that much syntax to learn, and so it has a pretty low learning curve. And everyone likes to use it, so we want to stay cool on the block. And look at this cute gopher. How could you say no to this cute little guy? And Svelte. Why are we going to be using Svelte instead of React or Vue or Angular or something else? Well, it's quite literally my personal favorite. So with Svelte, we have a really declarative approach. We write the code kind of like we expect it to behave. It's pretty easy to learn Svelte. And we're also not going to be dealing with stuff like a virtual DOM, which exists in frameworks like React, for example. We're actually going to be compiling our Svelte into vanilla JavaScript that speaks directly to the DOM. So whenever we update a variable, we're just going to be setting something, just like you would do with vanilla JavaScript. Pretty much the most optimized way of doing things. We're not going to have that much of a runtime overhead that we would get with virtual DOMs and stuff like that. And Tailwind CSS. Why are we going to be using Tailwind CSS? Well, instead of writing this fat code block of CSS, we're just going to be writing it in documents. So this will help us prototype and get stuff up and running really easily. So Tailwind CSS allows us to write all of our CSS practically in the classes. And we have a lot of these different utility classes that we can use to have different effects and different colors and rounding. And it's pretty much straightforward and easy to build a UI with the help of Tailwind CSS. So this video is just going to be a quick little short introduction and getting started. We're just going to set up the project, install all the necessary prerequisites. So first and foremost, we are going to be installing Svelte. There are really two main variants of Svelte. It's Vanilla Svelte and Svelte Kit. And if you don't know, Svelte Kit is actually using server-side rendering as well. So with Svelte Kit, you're practically running a server and you can run different backend functionality together with your front-end functionality. But that's not what we are going to be doing in this series, since we're going to have a backend in Golang. So we're going to be using vanilla Svelte for this. And as you can see here, there are alternatives to Svelte Kit. And we can actually use Svelte with something known as Vite. So what does this Vite do for us? Well, mainly it helps us bundle our application. So we bundle all of our application code into one fat JavaScript file and one fat CSS file and one HTML file. So that way we can easily distribute our code to the client. But we also have something known as the development server, which is incredibly useful, and one of the main reasons that Vite is so popular right now is because you can actually have hot reload with your code. So if you write a change in your code, you'll get that instantly reflected on in your browser. So you don't have to go through the pain of rebuilding every time you edit one single little line. And before you install Vite, it's also recommended that you install a Node.js so that you can run npm. Node.js is practically running JavaScript on your computer. Instead of running it in the browser, we're going to be executing JavaScript on your computer. And that's also what Vite and other packages use internally. You can install Node.js for your operating system by visiting this page, nodejs.org, and probably want to use LTS here and install it for your operating system, and make sure to also install npm together with it. I think there's some checkbox or something which you can check to make sure that you're also installing npm. So now that you have npm installed, let's go ahead and run this command here to install Vite. And I'm going to be using VS Code as my code editor because it's really popular and it's also supported on very many platforms, and we have a lot of extensions that we can use to make it really powerful. So let's go ahead and create a new terminal where we can run this command. So I'm just going to execute this command, npm create Vite at latest. This will install the latest version of the npm package Vite. So we're installing create Vite script, and then we get to name our project. I'm actually going to be naming this frontend, since this is going to be the frontend part of our full stack application. We're also going to have a backend in this same folder. So if you notice, I'm inside of this folder here, quiz platform, and I'm going to create a new folder by this command called frontend. Boom. Then we get to choose our framework, and we're going to be choosing Svelte for the reasons that I mentioned earlier. And then we get to select a variant, and in this case we have TypeScript, JavaScript, or SvelteKit, which I also mentioned previously. But we're going to be selecting TypeScript here because TypeScript really provides more type guarantees. It's more strictly typed, and we get much better type checking. So you can kind of guarantee that a variable will have a certain type and make different assumptions based on that, all making it easier to detect bugs. So let's select TypeScript here. And boom, you can see that it's scaffolded a new project in Quiz Platform Frontend. So let's open this with a VS Code. So here we can see that it generated a bunch of files, and we have a lot of interesting files here. But the main entry point here is actually main.ts, and this is where the magic begins. This is where we create our main component that we have called app.svelte, and then we're just gonna be rendering that app component inside of the app divider. So if you notice here, we have index.html, and this is our main HTML file. Since we're building a single page application, we have just a single HTML file where all the magic happens, where everything is rendered. And we render our application inside of this divider here. Make sure that you also install this extension Svelte for VS Code. So this is our main Svelte component. And as you notice, we have three main parts here. We have our script tag, we have our HTML, and then we have a style tag. And in the script tag, you can pretty much write vanilla JavaScript, but also with a bit of magic Svelte syntax. And the same really goes for the HTML. So you can see that this pretty much looks like vanilla HTML, but with a bit of different syntax. We also have these curly braces, and this pretty much denotes that we're going to have a JavaScript value here. So in this case, we have a Vite logo and a Svelte logo that's imported within our script here. But we also have child components. So as you notice here, we have a counter, and that's not a vanilla HTML element last time I checked. And that's because we're actually putting another component inside of this component. So you have a child component, and that's kind of the point of working with components, is to keep things pretty small. Try to keep a single responsibility as much as possible. We do not want a gigantic app.svelte where everything is going on. And then we also have a little style tag here, and this actually provides isolated CSS, which is something that I will touch on more in a future video. Let's first go ahead and do npm install to make sure that we install all of the required packages. And then we can do npm run dev to run the Vite development server. And as you can see now, we have created a new server running on port 5173. So let's go ahead and visit that in our browser. Vite plus Svelte, and here we can see our beautiful little counter component as well. And what does it do? Well, it increments this value here and updates that button. So let's take a peek inside counter.svelte and see what's going on. Does this look that terribly scary? I wouldn't say so. It looks pretty straightforward to me. So we have our button, a normal HTML button, but we actually add an event listener on this button. Just like you can do in vanilla JavaScript, we can add an event listener for the click event. So whenever the button is clicked, we want to bind this to a function. In this case, we bind it to this anonymous function. This might as well be the more old school function increment. But what happens inside of here? Well, we're just reassigning to this count variable here. Count plus equals 1, and boom, Svelte knows to update this code. Svelte just knows that, hey, I want to show the value count here. So whenever we update it, boom, it will just do that for us. Isn't that beautiful? So that's a quick little crash course into Svelte fundamentals, but let's also install our backend. So we're going to be installing Golang, and you can install this here on go.dev, and we can go ahead and download it, and the same thing applies here. You install it for whatever operating system you are using. So when you have installed Golang, let's go ahead and create a new folder here called backend. And let's move into it here in our terminal. And here we're going to set up our Golang project. So we're going to be doing go mod init. And here we're going to specify our package name. And I think the convention here is to specify this with a domain. So in our case, we're just going to be doing something like quiz.com since we don't have a domain yet. So quiz.com and this, and then slash the name of our package. We can also prepend here a version, but in our case we're just gonna have this version. So quiz.com/quiz, and boom. So this go.mod was created for us, and this is where we also can see different packages specifying Golang version and stuff like that. As you might have noticed, we had a nice little warning here from VS Code that we haven't actually installed all the necessary tools. So let's go ahead and do that. Update these tools. All tools successfully installed. You are ready to go. Something that I did not mention is that you might also want to install these extensions like Svelte for VS Code and the Golang extension. That is definitely necessary if you want to be using this in the VS Code. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and create our first Golang file. We're going to be naming this main.go. First, we need to specify our package for our file. This is something I will mention in the next upcoming video. But for now, we can just make this a main since this is our main package. And then we want to have our main function. This is the first function that will run in our application. And we need to name that main. And then we can go ahead and write to the console fmt print line to write to the console. And of course, we're going to be writing hello world. What else? So if we open up the terminal again, we can do go run main.go, and boom, we get hello world. Isn't that beautiful? And now we have our front end and our back end up and running and ready to rumble. So in the next video, we will start by setting up our back end to also include a HTTP server so we can start working our CRUD. We're also going to set up our database and start communicating between the front end and the back end. I hope you guys are looking forward to that. Feel free to comment your thoughts and opinions below, and also feel free to join my Discord channel if you want to be part of the community. But other than that, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.